This is Let's Talk with Hart Hagan, and I'm joined by Rolf Friis. Rolf, how are you today?
I'm great, Hart. How are you?
Doing great. So, Rolf, what's on your radar? What's been going on this week that you've been thinking about, and let's talk about it.
All right. So I know we've talked a lot on the show previously about election integrity and proprietary software. So there's some news on that front this week, and I'm going to read a little bit from this article so we can analyze it a little.
So,
This article is
big
called,
picture election integrity. It's like we keep hearing we have a democracy, but a democracy is only as good as you have, elections that are not tampered with, et cetera. So we've got a couple of rulings from this week to talk about.
yes. So this article here comes from votingjustice.us. This was by a writer named Dave Schwab. Is posted on the 2nd. It's called Wisconsin Court Again Rules for Stein Recount as PA Court Ridicules Election Integrity. So in the 2016 election, after it was over, candidate Jill Stein filed a what's the word I'm looking for? Filed lawsuits against for recounts in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania because she felt like the Green Party ballots had been flipped. So here's what's come of that. Former Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein announced another victory this week for election integrity in litigation arising from the Stein 2016 presidential recount. She celebrated an appeals court decision in Wisconsin, allowing her experts to inspect the software code that runs many voting machines used in Wisconsin and across the country. The decision affirms her right to disclose to the public the experts' conclusions about the software reliability and accuracy. So that is a major deal. Somebody's actually going to get to inspect this proprietary software that Wisconsin uses, and of course many other states across the country use that same software. So this is a huge win. So I'll be following this closely to see what comes out of this and see what they find. And as soon as she's announced that, we can talk about that on the show as well. But that's amazing. What do you think about that news, Art?
Well, a couple of things, election integrity, it's like the Republicans have this thing called voter fraud, and that's why they pretend why they pretend there's a legitimate reason for requiring two voter IDs and things like that. It tends to suppress the vote of people that tend to be poor or have to travel further. But so I want to avoid the word voter fraud because that it suggests that you have poor people stuffing the ballot box, which just doesn't happen. But there is a type of voter suppression and election rigging that occurs by both parties. Some of it is because of this proprietary software. And it's like, why don't we just count votes by hand or at least have a verifiable paper ballot? But instead, we have this software that is proprietary. I mean, don't get me started on intellectual property. That if you're voting, if the government is paying you to count the votes in an election, then we, the people, should have the right to audit that. There should be transparency. And I don't care, you can just go on with your bad self if you think that your right to this or that software is going to make us take away our ability to inspect the elections that you're supposed to be counting the votes for. So
Here's the question. So her team gets access to that software and they find vote flipping or some other form of fraud or manipulation or anything. Does anything come out of that? And that's I'm less confident on that. What do you think about that?
I'm not quite following the facts there.
So say they inspect the software
Mm-hmm.
and they do find that there were shenanigans in the software. Legally, do you think anything comes out of that, or do you think it just gets swept under the rug?
There should be harsh penalties for any kind of election rigging. You're taking away our democracy. If you, I mean, so my question is, why are there not harsh penalties for interfering with votes? If we had a functioning democracy, there would be harsh penalties for intentionally interfering with the vote count. What am I missing?
I think that's a form of treason and should be treated as such.
Yeah,
If you intentionally
that
mess
good
with,
point. Good point.
if you intentionally mess with the results of an election that affects everybody, I see that as a form of treason and should be prosecuted as such.
Right. I mean, federal officials anyway have to swear allegiance to the Constitution. Sometimes I wonder what state and local officials have to swear to. But, if you pledge allegiance to the flag or if you swear an oath to the Constitution, then yeah, it is treason to cause any kind of miscount of votes in any election anywhere. So how is it that how is it that people get away with that? And I would say it's the two-party duopoly. Both parties have an interest in being able to rig elections, and even Bernie Sanders thinks it's just something Republicans do. No, the Democratic establishment is able to suppress the vote, and they're able, like these elections that deal with Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. These are instances where the Democratic Party is rigging elections and interfering with votes.
And it's in the interest of both parties to keep the system that way because they both do it. And that Tim Canova, Florida example is a perfect example because one of the reasons they haven't done anything about that is because Florida is rigged depending on where you live in Florida. So in Broward County, where Tim Canova is, that's a Democrat stronghold. Everybody in the state knows Broward aren't very reliable elections, to put it nicely, but they're not going to do anything about it because there are other parts of the state that are Republican controlled and operate in the same fashion. So if they fix one, they have to fix the other, and neither party wants that. And so that brings us to the second part of this article here, where we got some bad news, and that is Pennsylvania. So what it says here is, one day before the Wisconsin decision, a Pennsylvania judge issued a decision denying an attempt by Stein and several Pennsylvania voters to decertify the controversial ES&S Express Vote XL. Diamond ridiculed the expert testimony of Dr. Alex Halderman, one of the nation's foremost computer security experts, and dismissed well-established concerns that election systems may be vulnerable to hacking. Diamond's denunciation of Stein's fight for election integrity came less than 24 hours before the Wisconsin Court of Appeals advanced the cause Judge Diamond derided. Stein observes, Judge Diamond's ruling is a disservice to the people of Pennsylvania. Nevertheless, we are pleased that the case exposed the truth about the Express Vote XL. These machines are unreliable, overpriced, and make it virtually impossible to verify the vote. Bringing to light previously unexamined facts about Express Vote XL contributed to decisions by several counties to reject these flawed machines in favor of more reliable and less expensive voting systems. So it's a tale of two states there, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, same type of deal, but Pennsylvania rules against it. But it's not the worst case scenario. With the Wisconsin win, we're still going to be able to look into the software. And so it'll be a win in the end, but it just goes to show you the corruption at the state level. And, I feel bad for the voters of Pennsylvania in this case here.
Right. I mean, I feel I could go off on a couple of different tangents. I probably shouldn't, but one tangent
Go for
is,
it.
ranked choice voting would solve a lot of this. With ranked choice voting, we would get a meaningful third, fourth, fifth, and sixth parties involved in elections and be able to correct the corruption of the two main parties. And another tangent I could go off on is the word overpriced. So it was the Wisconsin decision said that these voting machines are overpriced. And sometimes I wonder if a lot of it just seems like that we have some fake solutions going on. Oh, we're going to order a study and the study costs $60,000. Well, who's being paid for a study? Or we're going to renovate this building and we're not going to do anything with the building once we renovate it, but who's making $200,000 to renovate a building? So sometimes I think that our elections who is buying our democracy? And sometimes it's just people that government contractors that are making money off of this or that. And in this case, it's government contractors that are making money off of supposedly counting the votes in elections. But just the word overpriced here in the court's decision indicates that somebody's making some money and they're making too much money for what they're doing. And we have people volunteering to man the polls. There are people volunteering because they're dedicated to our democracy. And we have these companies come in and charge money for doing what volunteers would be willing to do. Don't get me started. So that's all I have to say about that.
Nice. So what so time wise, where are we at right now?
I don't know. We've got plenty of time.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to the next article that I've got here. It's a political article from 4 days ago. This is from Alice Miranda Olstein. And this is called Hard Stop. States could lose National Guard virus workers. So this, before I get into reading some of this here, this is just a heartbreaking thing because calling the National Guard to help during a pandemic, they're putting their safety, their health on the line, and then they're getting slapped in the face at the end of this. So what are they talking about here? More than 40,000 National Guard members currently helping states test residents for the coronavirus and trace the spread of infections will face a hard stop, quote unquote, on their deployments on June 24th, just 1 day shy of many members becoming eligible for key federal benefits, according to the senior FEMA official. Which say that 5 times fast. So that's heartbreaking here.
So what big picture for our listeners, what we're talking about is this National Guard or what, our Army Reserve, National Guard?
National Guard.
So National Guard members, a stop was put on their deployment, and the result of that is that they're being deprived of their retirement benefits.
Yes. So there's some more information in this article. There's a bunch of filler I had to scroll past that was just not necessary. But once you get about halfway down, it says more than 40,000 Guard members are currently serving under federal orders known as Title 32, which grants them federal pay and benefits, but puts them under local command in 44 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia. The largest domestic deployment since Hurricane Katrina. Tens of thousands of them have been working full-time since early March on a wide range of sensitive and dangerous tasks, such as decontaminating nursing homes and setting up field hospitals, along with performing tests for the virus. The cost of deployment is as much as $9 million per month for every 1,000 troops, according to the National Council of State Legislatures. An expense the states that would have to shoulder, an expense that states would have to shoulder should Title 32 expire. In addition, state deployments do not count toward federal education and retirement benefits. Guard members must serve for 20 years to qualify for pension at the age 60, but for every 90 days serving during a federal emergency, Guard members can move that retirement by 3 months. 90 days of service also qualifies members for 40% off tuition at a public college or university. So that's what they're being denied right there. 40% off tuition for college. They're also, being kept from an early retirement. And it's just disgusting. It's just, a total misuse of our National Guard. If you're going to put them to use like that, you have to take care of them. That goes for National Guard, any of our armed forces, any of that, Peace Corps, whatever you have.
So why is this an outrage?
Why is this an outrage? Because these people were called up, put their health and safety there. I mean, it says some of the things that they're doing is directly in the line of fire. Decontaminating nursing homes, performing the tests, they're right there on the front line. It doesn't get any more front line than that. So we need to take care of these people. These are jobs that need to be done. And I can see the National Guard doing this, but you got to take care of them. You putting people in these situations, they have families. You got to take care of their family. And, that's pretty much where I'm at on that.
So one question is, we hear all this about patriotism and honoring our troops. And here's an instance where the troops are not being honored. If you don't give them what's their due, then, you're not taking care of the people. It's unethical and it's hypocritical.
Absolutely. And it just shows you how much they mean, when they say support the troops, it's really just a slogan. But when it comes to actually doing the supporting, we leave them in high and dry. And we see that from the amount of homeless veterans across the country. And, like a story I told you earlier off camera is a few years back, I met a veteran who had to get by working at 3 a.m. cleaning Walmart parking lots across the county. And, that's better than some veterans. I mean, he still had his limbs. He hasn't committed suicide. He wasn't homeless, but he went and served his country. He put his life on the line. And when he got home, instead of being taken care of, he had to resort to working at 3 a.m. in Walmart parking lots. And that it just made me so sad. I've still remembered that encounter all these years later. And but I thought we're supposed to support our troops. Well, supporting our troops means supporting them after they're done serving, making sure they're able to live lives, have good careers, and be able to take care of their families, make sure they're not working at 3 a.m. cleaning parking lots. And again, he's lucky compared to some, but if that's better than some, and how bad does it get? So it just flies in the face of all the military propaganda. They pump it up to get you to support it, but on the back end, they just leave you hanging.
Right. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm tempted to go off on several tangents about that, but
Go
one,
for it. Yeah.
well, I mean, most people, for every veteran, we could, instead of spending all this money on the military, I mean, there's a time and a place for the National Guard to be doing things, and we should be doing more of that and less time fighting wars overseas. But, we need to direct some of this money, most of this, we need to reduce our defense by 90% because it's not about defense, it's about making profits for profiteers. We need to redirect that. I have like 9 different areas where we could create jobs. Solar power, wind power, mass transit, ecological landscaping, ecological farming, ecological landscaping, and lastly, education, healthcare, and arts and entertainment are all areas where we could create jobs that have to do with the common good. Instead, we put all this money into the military. We false propaganda, and too many people find a career path in the military, and it's basically the death economy.
Yes.
So it's for profiteering. And the reason I named 9 things that we need for the common good, and that's just a start. And the reason that doesn't get funded is because there's not much profiteering to be had in those things. I mean, there is jobs to be there. They could be the source of good jobs, but the jobs and profits are 2 different things. And the things that get the attention of government are things that make profits and not jobs.
Like, I know it's not okay to say nice things about China right now, but last year China took their military and put them on a tree planting expedition in their country. That makes a major difference for China and the people of that as those trees grow, as opposed to having them around 900 or whatever bases across the country, or guarding opium in Afghanistan or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how we should be using our military. So we need to go from that death economy or the war economy and move to a green economy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of obstacles to that, and that brings me to my next article here, which is another obstacle to the green economy. And this article is from The Hill, and it's called "New Documents Show EPA Rolled Back Mileage Standards Despite Staff White House Concerns." And this is from the 20th. I don't know how to pronounce this lady's last name, but it looks like it's by Rebecca Beach, and I apologize because I probably butchered that name really badly. But Rebecca writes, "The Trump administration pushed ahead with the rule that guts Obama-era clean car standards over objections from career staff at the Environmental Protection Agency and concerns within the White House, new documents show. The regulations finalized in March roll back perhaps the most significant climate measure implemented during the Obama administration by lowering both fuel efficiency and emission thresholds in a rule that's expected to cost consumers some $13 billion. Internal documents obtained by Senator Tom Carper detailed how EPA staff objected to claims that the new rule would reduce climate change impacts, while other files show that the White House Office of Management and Budget said the rule lacked legal justification. And so what those new standards are.
The main thing is that, the fuel efficiency standards have been relaxed, right?
Yeah, so what it says here, the new standards require automakers to produce a fleet averaging 40 miles per gallon by 2026, rather than the previous requirement of 55 miles per gallon by 2025. The standards are collaboration between the EPA and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Mm-hmm. So it pushes it back a year and drops it 15 miles a gallon is what it's doing. And ironically, it's doing this while, oil is at a low on the cost, and we've got tankers around the world just sitting out in the ocean with nowhere to go. And here they are still relaxing fuel standards. And this wasn't even a very old law, so they've already done away with that. And in my mind, the original law wasn't enough or fast enough.
Right.
And of course, we're cutting that out. So,
well, why do you think they're doing this?
Oh, it's profit. I mean, there's so much, and we talk about it, the lobbyists. We have so many fossil fuel lobbyists that take care of our Senate and our House and make sure that things like this happen. So they spend a lot of money to make this happen, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money they could make. At least that's how they see it. And, I don't know how the oil is going to rebound here, but this is just another thing where capitalism has sunk its hooks into a system, made money on it, and now we can't seem to go forward as a society because the money makers don't allow it. They don't want to give up their profit-making enterprises. So
you think this is because of capitalism?
Yeah, at its core, yes. Now, obviously, there are specific people here that are greedy and taking bribes, but at its core, yes, capitalism. It's just a system of profit over everything, and this is profit for fossil fuel industry. And they're going to keep trying to make this profit as long as they can, no matter whether it's good for society or not, no matter whether or not we have other options we can move to. They have their money invested in this. They want to stick with this, and they're going to ride it out to the end. It's just another example.
So one way that could make their fleet more efficient is to have more electric cars, probably.
Yes, we could go that route, but again, they'd rather take the time to relax regulations here.
So this is the oil companies benefit from lower gas mileage. What about the car companies? Do they benefit from that?
Well, I mean, that's less they have to put into research and development on how to meet these fuel standards. They can just, keep doing what they're doing and saving some more pennies. That, assuming that this law stands, they look at it as they've got 6 years to worry about it. So, why bother now? That it'll be a last second deal for these car companies to enact these standards. But I'm sure between now and 2026, they're going to, throw more money at politicians and see if they can lower it to, 35 miles a gallon by 2030 or whatever, and just keep chipping away at it. But it's the wrong direction to go. We really need the green economy.
Well, what does the green economy mean to you?
Sustainability. Fossil fuels, they are finite. They do run out. They will run out. We need something that's not going to run out. We need something that we have our energy needs met today, tomorrow, next week, next year, next decade, in 50 years. We need to make sure that we set up systems that affect not only us, but our kids and our grandkids. And we need it to be in a way that's beneficial for people and our health, for the health of the environment, and to the wildlife out there in nature. So fossil fuels don't do any of that. They through the whole process from extraction to use, they're just pollutants. And unfortunately, putting all that money into the the CEOs of these companies to drag this out. But yeah, green.
Is, a couple of tangents I'm tempted to go off on. One is democracy, and the other is externalities. So what would it look like if our transportation system was of, by, and for the people? It wouldn't, Exxon and Shell and the rest wouldn't have the ability to make these changes happen that are against the interests of the people, right?
Right.
So the issue at root is we don't, look at most of the problems we have, especially as it involves public policy. If you ask me, the problems we have are traceable to a lack of democracy, that we don't have a government of, by, and for the people. It's of, by, and for the oil companies, of, by, and for the car companies. Our transportation system is of, by, and for the car companies and the oil companies. And they get to, and then the other tangent I'm tempted to go off on is externalities. We're supposed to have, in fact, there's a topic that we were going to talk about. We might still think about talking about it, and that is, the fake economy, the myth of the strong economy. But we have, everything is measured by GDP. We're supposed to want economic growth, but economics, such as it is, it charades, or it disguises itself as a science, but it's actually an ideology. The fact that we focus on GDP and economic growth is it tends to benefit the big money interests, because economic growth is something that's good for their pocketbooks, but there's so many externalities built into it that I like to say, I mean, I am done with GDP. I'm done with GDP as a measure of anything that counts. We need to be measuring gross national happiness, not gross domestic product. And we have the ability to measure gross domestic happiness or gross national happiness, but we keep measuring gross domestic product, which measures hardly anything that counts, and it measures hardly anything that matters.
Well, at least not to it doesn't count or matter to the average person like you or me.
Right.
It obviously it counts and matters to the top 1%, 0.1% really. But that's not society. So just because something's beneficial to any 0.1% of society doesn't mean it's beneficial to society as a whole. And in this case, it is absolutely not. So let's get into the myth of the strong economy. As far as, obviously the economy has taken a hit during the pandemic. So when we say strong economy, it's what people were talking about right before the pandemic hit and how we were operating.
Or it's the normal we're supposed to get back to.
Right, the normal,
yeah.
The normal that I hope we do not get back to.
Get back
but,
to normal. Get back to business as usual, as if that was working for anybody but those at the very top.
Right. So it's become apparent. I've seen a lot of this conversation here recently, as usual. But under Obama, all the Democrats say he really brought up the strong economy. He took over for Bush and made the economy strong. And then Trump came into office, and he immediately said he made the economy stronger, even though he was still operating on Obama's plans or whatever. That's a whole nother discussion. And now, it's this whole pandemic thing, and it's going to cost Trump the election because it's ruining his unprecedented great economy. Here's the thing, though. The economy wasn't great. It was not at all. It wasn't under Obama. It's not under Trump. If we get Biden and he continues the same path, it won't be great under Biden. It's just not. It's been going downhill for decades. So how do I know that? Well, let's look at some of the statistics. In this economy, 60% of all wealth is inherited. 60%. In this economy, this great economy, 70% of people can't afford a $500 emergency. About 70% of people work check to check in this great economy. That doesn't sound too safe. You have an emergency. What are you going to do? That's not great. We have less buying power as an individual that we've had since the 70s. So how is that a great economy? If adjusted for inflation, I can't buy as much as my parents did in the 70s. So, that's another sign. And I had some other statistics that I, now that we're on air, I can't remember all of them, but there's so many. The bottom line is, it's not working well for the people. It's all the money you know, under Obama and Trump, all the gains in this economy were going to the top 10%. That's where almost all the gains are going. So you're not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Our neighbors aren't seeing this. And these people, all they're doing is racking up this money, not paying taxes on it, not giving back to society, and they're bribing politicians, putting money overseas in these accounts that can't be traced, so on and so forth. That's not how we need to go. We need an economy that works for us. So we need, you know, worker control, people control of this stuff. And I don't know, what's your take on all this?
I'm with you. So, you know, I mean, what does the economy measure? If you know, GDP or economic growth measures the amount of money that's exchanging hands. We could sit here all day and name things where money is changing hands, but that's not beneficial to people. I mean, cancer is where money is changing hands, but is that beneficial to people? You know, overpriced health insurance is money changing hands, but is that beneficial to people? We have you know, we spend $9,000 per year per automobile on average, and that's money changing hands, but that's money out that gets sucked out of the family budget. It gets sucked out of the local economy. So that's money changing hands, and it adds to GDP, but is it beneficial to people? And sometimes, you know, a topic I'm going to get into going forward is I'm going to start naming things that could reduce our cost of living. If you want to help average people, then how many ways could we reduce our cost of living? Medicare for all would be cheaper for everybody. We could reduce our rent controls, would be good for reducing our cost of living. Having government funded affordable housing like Bernie was talking about, that would be good for our cost of living. Having more public transportation would be good for our cost of living. There's so many things that would be good. You know, supporting local community supported agriculture would be good for our cost of living. There's so many things that would reduce our cost of living and give us more freedom. And none of that is factored into GDP. So, and don't get me started on the stock market. I mean, just because the stock market is going up, you know, if I think the figure is something on the order of 83% of stock is owned by 1% of people, stock market going up might make all the difference in the world to Trump's donors or Obama's donors or Clinton's donors or George W. Bush's donors or Mitch McConnell's donors or John Yarmouth's donors. But that's not most people.
Stat.
That's not most people. All right, go ahead.
So I was about to give that exact stat when you brought it up. And, I believe it's 84% of all stocks are owned by 10% of the public. So
Yeah,
that's
if you look
ridiculous.
Like, you were talking about buying power and like adjusted for inflation, average wages, the minimum wage has hardly kept up with inflation. The average wage has hardly kept up with inflation. The vast majority of gains in income have gone to the top few percent. The vast majority of gains in wealth have gone to the top few percent. The majority of wealth is inherited wealth, not earned wealth. You can go on and on about how the game is rigged against average people. You know, productivity has gone up, but
it's through the roof. All-time highs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Go ahead. I just want to throw that.
No, not at all. You know, another thing we could do that would help average people is for our workplaces to be democratically controlled. There should be a right of first refusal. If you're going to sell a business or go out of business, then your employees should have the right of first refusal. You should offer it to your employees at the same price that you would offer, at the same or better price that you would offer it to anybody else. That you should not be able to, if you're going to go out of business and sell your assets, you should not be able to sell it to somebody else for $1 million, but if the employees want to buy it, they'd have to pay $2 million. You know, and there should be a right of first refusal. There should be favorable terms of financing so that we could control the means of production. And as Richard Wolff points out, I mean, it's just a whole, you know, it would be a whole different ballgame. You know, there's different definitions of capitalism, but the definition of capitalism that I like is where capital gets gets to control everything. If you're in a business, you bring the money to the business and you call the shots. Whether a business, ships jobs overseas, you get to call the shots if you bring the capital to the business. So the labor doesn't have a voice in a system that's controlled by capital. Labor doesn't have a voice in a political system that's controlled by capital. The vote really is not very meaningful, and vote is virtually meaningless if the system is bought by people that own capital. So anyway.
Yeah, with all this, we need an economy that really works for the people and keeps people from doing jobs that are there just for the sake of doing jobs. First of all, we need to have people working less. We need a UBI so people can work less. And this frees people up to work on things they want to work on, thoughts they've had, ideas they've had. So maybe, that's how invention comes along, some kind of new system. We need that. We need to give people the time to do that. We also need to, we need to get rid of some of these jobs that are just pointless. This reminds me, I saw in the news this morning from a Ben Swan report that who was it got a bailout was considered an essential job was the arms manufacturer salesman. So if you're in arms sales, that has now been made to be an essential job somehow, which is just insane to me. That job, it needs to go away. We need to look at what's, and the pandemic has pointed this out, but we need to look at the problems of society and where we need to put people to work at. We need to upgrade our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water sewers, really old. We need to move forward with green infrastructure so we can have people working on that. We've also found that we need pandemic preparedness so we can give people jobs manufacturing and building things that we need for various pandemics, from masks and gloves to ventilators or whatever else various pandemics could need. We need to have that in place and ready to go. And these things are all essential. And this is what people should be spending their time at. And it shouldn't just be some of these what I call wasted time jobs. It's just a job for the sake of having a job, so some millionaire, billionaire CEO can make more money, but it doesn't actually contribute to society. Let's get people working on stuff that helps. Worker co-ops and gardening, getting rid of these food deserts in the city. There's plenty of these jobs there. We just need to direct jobs in the right place. And I think UBI would really help that. We still don't have high-speed rail in this country. Why don't we have that? We need to move forward with these types of things and the type of transportation systems that we need going forward as another way to reduce fossil fuels with the cars that are out there. So we've got a long way to go. The pandemic gives us an opportunity to kind of get there, or to at least lay the foundation to get there. But it doesn't seem like our leaders want us to get there. So we just have to push harder.
Yeah, I keep getting back to this idea about, so you're talking about what controls, what calls the shots, what makes the decisions, what makes the decisions in a business, what makes the decisions as far as public policy, what makes it like preparedness for a pandemic. If we let capital make decisions about preparedness for a pandemic, well, capital would just as soon make money off of sickness. Capital doesn't have any incentive to prepare for a pandemic. And does capital get to decide what jobs get created? We should decide collectively. Teachers, firefighters, and soldiers are three examples of, government can create jobs. It just has to be a perception. There has to be a perceived need that this is something that we need. Even doctors and nurses, a lot of those jobs are created by government insofar as government pays for Medicare and Medicaid, and that creates jobs for doctors and nurses. And those are decisions that we decide collectively, instead of just thinking that it's somehow inevitable that capital is the only one that's qualified to decide what jobs get created. So there's a lot. A public healthcare system could be this whole big thing, and a public healthcare system would contemplate preparedness for pandemics, preparedness for natural disasters, etc. And so there's just this whole set of opportunities that we don't think about because we're not trained to think about it. Because for one thing, the capital owns the media, and they're not going to tell us these things because capital's in charge of the media.
Another thing people don't think about too with this type of economy is work-life balance that it affects for so many. So you have so many people working 2-3 jobs to survive or to get ahead or to pay off college tuition or a medical bill or whatever it is. You have people working internships, which is basically unpaid labor, as a way to pay dues. But most of these people are in school. How are they going to pay for that school if they're in a job making no money? And how much does it train them when they're really just picking up dry cleaning and getting coffee and stuff like that? So it's just terrible. You have the gig economy scam where these people work for these big companies who do absolutely nothing except maybe provide an app and then skim off the top. But you have companies like Uber. Sometimes these employees actually lose money through Uber. And they take all the risks. So they have to upkeep on their own vehicle, their own gas, the wear and tear on their car. They have to pay for things like bottled water to keep in there, to keep the ratings up and all this stuff. And the company doesn't do any of that. They found a way to take away all the liability and expense of a business, but still make the profit from the worker. So these are the type of things, with work-life balance, you see these Uber drivers are also driving for Lyft. They're driving Amazon Flex, what's the other one? Mr. Delivery and all these. These people have 3, 4, 5 jobs doing this all the time, picking this stuff up. That's no way to live. Everybody should be able to have one full-time job. And with full-time, it should be less than 40 hours to me. We should look at a more European model, maybe 30 hours. So people have that extra time to start new businesses, start new projects, that kind of thing, work in the community, do volunteer work. So that's another side effect of our current economy is it's just so time consuming and you get so little back for that.
Right. So what's the solution to that? If you were king of the world, what would Uber and Lyft look like? And how would that be different?
I'd probably run them out of business, to be honest. I've never used Uber or Lyft. I never would. I would just call a cab if that's the situation, because I just feel like the cabbie it's more of a traditional base, but that's not the question here. What I would do is I would push for employee-owned businesses, as we've talked about before, and unionization where employee-owned can't do it. And I would not allow for companies to exist where they're able to exploit labor in a manner of the gig economy. In other words, where they avoid all the risk and all the expense, but are still able to rake in profit. That's just not right. Mm-hmm. The worker is doing everything, literally everything for Uber, except for they didn't create an app. That's literally it. And props to them for creating the app to do that. That doesn't mean that you should get.
I disagree. Government did that. Government research laid the groundwork for all that technology to create an app. And yeah, businesses do a little. They might add 10%, 20% of the value to that. But so much of the apps and the technology platforms that these companies profit from was developed at public expense. So that's the one thing. That's one of the things that I was going to say if I was king of the world, and I would have said the same thing you did about employee-owned businesses. And I would say I'm tired of Bill Gates being lionized. I'm tired of Jeff Bezos being lionized. Elon Musk. These are people who have made a bunch of money profiting from technology that was developed at taxpayer expense. So one issue is who gets to profit from technology, and another issue is who gets to control technology. We have all these issues with privacy and surveillance, and the issue there is who gets to control the technology that was developed at public expense. So.
And that's a good point, and I totally agree with that. My point is just that Uber or any of these gig economy jobs. They offer so little, just a piece of technology. And then for them, it's passive work because that technology is created. There's nothing else for them to do except sit back and rake in the money, really. So it's a heck of a scheme they came up with. And unfortunately, now we have a large percentage of the population doing these types of jobs. But yeah, I'm not going to call Uber or Lyft, any of that stuff. I'm just not going to do it. No offense.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like food and farming and agriculture. And I'm going to share the screen, which is relevant to people that are watching the video. And so one of my heroes is Vandana Shiva. She's really entertaining and warm, and she's a person who's concerned about food and farming and agriculture. So it's like, how is this relevant to the average person? And I think, when you look at how agriculture is done, it's like agriculture is like 40% of the land is taken up through agriculture, and it tends to be very unsustainable. You're using a lot of inputs. You're using pesticides that kill pollinators. You're using herbicides that kill weeds. You have these big monocrops that and what could be done is we could have a way of farming and food production that is good for nature. We could have farming and food production that not only produces food and more nutritional food than what we get, but it also absorbs carbon because you're using more trees and bushes and woody plants tend to absorb carbon. And thirdly, you could have all this be habitat for wildlife. We could have our farms be habitat for birds, butterflies, and bees, whereas what we have now is just these big monocrops that are very unsustainable. So that's my vision for a healthy world where we get to, live a little bit closer to the earth. We get to, our agriculture system could either absorb carbon or emit carbon, and it's catastrophic right now how much our agriculture system emits carbon, partly through deforestation, partly through carbon-intensive fertilizers, and anyway, so what we have is a system that only works for a few organizations, a few corporations that have big money. So it's like, what would it look like if our food system was of, by, and for the people? It all gets back to democracy. What would our food system look like if it was of, by, and for the people? The reason we have such an unsustainable food system right now is because it is not of, by, and for the people.
Absolutely. It's of, by, and for the profit. It's like everything else. It seems to be a pattern, isn't it? Everything's for the profit.
Right.
But yeah, if it's for the people, then we're going to have to totally redo our system, and eventually that's going to have to happen. But we need to focus, in my opinion, on more local food systems. So community gardens, this monoculture. We need these farms, vegetables, grains, and all these things. We need to use permaculture as a self-sustaining way to farm. We need to have food forests in the cities, in the food deserts, to help grow various types of food for the people, and also kind of, get rid of the heat sink in the city and just the benefits that come with having these food forests in the middle of dense populations. It's more than just food. It's health. So these are the things we need to do. We need to control this ourselves. These need to be businesses that are owned by the people and not owned by the CEOs, that's food businesses. We need to get away from these CAFOs, these gigantic, animal prisons, so to speak, where we keep the pigs and chickens and everything. Those need to be done away with. And there's so much, there's so many little things. There's not any one thing we can do to make this for the people, but it's a combination, and the whole system has to change. And the sooner we do it, the more sustainable it's going to be, the more people we're going to be able to feed locally, and the less it's going to cost us in the long term.
Right. I like what you're saying about food forests and also addressing food deserts and the heat island. It never occurred to me till just now that if we had sustainable food production, if we had food forests in our like abandoned urban land, then that would help absorb carbon, but it would also provide some shade to address the urban heat island effect. And and the question is, so this is a win-win-win. It's a win-win-win for people. It's a lose for capital. It's a lose for the people who want to control and control our government and exploit our people and trash our environment. It's a loss for them. But, so my question is, what would metro government look like if it was of, by, and for the people? Metro government would be busy with creating food systems that work for us, cooperative food systems, community gardens, community supported agriculture, regional, Vandana Shiva used the term food shed. So we think of a watershed as kind of a region in which water flows into a certain river or stream. And you could use the same concept. If you have a city like Louisville, we probably can't, over the course of time, I think we could grow 100% of our food here in Louisville if we set our mind to it. But certainly
Absolutely.
we can grow it within this region. It's absurd that Kentucky and Indiana have some of the most fertile ground in the country, and we still get most of our food from, 1,500, 90% of our food from 1,500 miles away. I heard like the state of Iowa, one of the most fertile places, and they get 90% of their food from outside of Iowa. There's no reason for it, and we could move to something that works for us. And so why is Metro Council not busy on, why are they not on this?
If you ask them, my guess would probably be they would reply with the budget, because anytime I talk to Metro Council, that's what they had behind right away. It's like a pre-programmed answer, it seems like, and it's
which is code for we're not going to have a progressive tax system.
Yes.
Okay, progressive tax system, like tax on luxury cars, tax on McMansions. If your house is like 100, 150, $200,000 somewhere in there, freaking exempt. And beyond that, progressive tax on property. And some people would think, the people would squawk and say, you're going to get rid of the goose that laid the golden egg. No, I don't think wealth creates wealth. I think wealth extracts wealth, and we would have more wealth if we would attend to the needs of the average person and have progressive taxes above that.
Wealth does, I forgot the term you just said, but yes, you're spot on with that. Wealth does not create wealth. It does extract wealth. So spot on there.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to point out, as far as a food system for the people, if we're going to do that, it has to be pesticide free. We got to get rid of the chemicals. It's, it's not good to have that in our food. That stuff, it gets down into our water systems, which again gets back to us. It hurts the environment, hurts the wildlife. Again, all that's intertwined. It gets back to us. So if we're going to do a food system for us, it needs to be, we got to go backwards sometimes to go to a more organic type of farm system, along with everything else, just to keep those chemicals out and, keep it healthy for us. That's the way to do it if we're truly doing it for the people.
We've got about another minute or two left. What else can we say about local food and farming and why it's important? And one person said, oh, well, people don't know how to farm. Most people don't know how to farm. That sounds like a naysayer who is invested in the system such as it is. But
now's the time to learn. Start your victory farm. We're in a pandemic. My Kroger shelves are a lot less empty than they used to be. It's the perfect time for everybody to learn how to farm. I'm not a farmer. I have a condo. Doesn't get great sun. I have a balcony, but I grow as much as I can on my balcony every year, a combination of herbs and some vegetables and some pollinator-friendly flowers, best that I can, and I'm just learning by doing it. And so every year it gets a little bit better. But just do it. Just start small. Start with some containers. Grow some tomatoes and some easy stuff and a few herbs, and just expand that every year, and be self-sustainable. Also support your local farmers market. That's always important, and if you know people with local farms, make agreements with them to get your food there. So support them and yourself.
Sounds good, Rolf. Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm happy that you joined me. Let's do it again next week.
Yes, sir. Sounds great.
Okay.